Hello, I'm Gareth.
And I'm Shane, and welcome to Building Business Resilience.
This is a podcast from Sanctuary Financial Planning, which helps growth business owners and social media influencers achieve financial independence.
We're two passionate financial planners on a mission to seek out new ideas, tips and tricks to help you take control of your finances and run better businesses.
We delve into the true goals and aspirations of our guests in order to provide you with some real value and positivity.
Nothing outrageous, clear, simple, solid financial solutions. We also have a YouTube series to accompany this, and details will be at the end of the show. So let's move on to our guest.
Welcome back to the Building Business Resilience Show. It's episode 15, and in today's show, we're going to be talking to Carl Richards. Carl is a certified financial planner and creator of the Sketch Guy column, appearing weekly in the New York Times since 2010. Through his simple sketches, Carl makes complex financial concepts easy to understand. His sketches also serve as the foundation for his two books, One Page Financial Plan and The Behavior Gap. We chat to Carl about his early years, his column in the New York Times, mental toughness, and making complex financial ideas simple. So, without much further ado, let's get started. Hi, Carl. How's things?
I'm great. Super good. Yeah.
Thanks for coming on and giving your time.
Pleasure. Honored to be here.
How are you finding things in lockdown?
Look, we've chosen to focus on it's been amazing. I've had some of the most productive months in my life. From a creative perspective, it's given me an opportunity to really focus on the stuff that we can control, and we've learned a lot. Family wise, we've had amazing experiences. Even the family that lives in the States, we've had, a regular Sunday chat that we didn't seem to have before. So it's been amazing. We've learned a lot. I can't complain. That's for sure.
Yeah. I think of the bad side of it, I think some very good's going to come out of it. Yeah. And I hope that things kind of change for some people going forward, and people don't just slot back into the old way of doing things and, the fast running around everywhere. Because it definitely has made people reflect. I've got a 6-month-old daughter, so it's allowed me to spend time with her, probably more time than I normally would have.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I hope that too. I think, unfortunately, what we know about human behavior is it won't take more than 3 months for people to slide right back into exactly the way things were. But I do think there's something. They say that one of the most important words in the English language is remember. And I think if we can remember some of the things we learned here and remind ourselves, it'd be cool. I've built some new kind of habits even that I'm just look, hopefully I won't break those. But yeah, the temptation to just go right back into the current that you were swimming in before, it will take some real intention, right? And normally we don't do that.
It is going to be different, but I would imagine even certain things such as your neighbours there in the old world, if you're allowed to call it that, they may not have been as friendly, where it does seem that neighbours and people that live near each other do seem to be more interactive with each other, more talkative and communicate more with each other now, maybe because they're within a bubble of an isolated area. But it does seem that people actually are talking to each other now as friends and humans, rather than just grunting or even ignoring people as they walked in the street in this time last year.
Yeah, I hope so.
So it's a positive. It's a positive.
Yeah, definitely. Because you're in London, aren't you, at the moment?
Yep.
Yeah. Which part?
West Hampstead.
Oh, nice. So it's probably scorching in London at the moment.
It seems pretty hot.
We're conscious of time. We have a habit of rabbiting on and stuff like that. Gareth mentioned there about London. Talk to us about your early years and what did you do at the start of your career?
Yeah, I mean, I got into this industry quite by accident. It wasn't really my intention. I was in university, and in the States we have this thing where you can be an undeclared major, which means you just sort of go knock out kind of some of your basics while you figure out what you want to do. And I was an undeclared major, got a job at a big financial sort of call center quite by accident. But what kept me in the industry and what has kept me ever since interested is when I sort of uncovered for myself that it wasn't a spreadsheet and calculator job. As important as those skills are, I uncovered that it was a human job, and that this was really like people's interaction with money was really driven by emotion. And there's something really unique and primal about our relationship with money, and this sort of shekels that we used to trade, or the seashells or whatever, like that whole sense is what's kept me interested. And so I moved on from that place and went to work for a big brokerage firm, and I was giving advice for a living, and noticed that my super smart, intelligent clients weren't understanding a lot of the words I was using. And it clearly wasn't their fault, because they were super smart, intelligent people. It was some shortcoming of mine. So in sort of a series of kind of acts of desperation, I would say, no, like this. And I would draw something on whatever was around, a yellow pad, a whiteboard, a napkin. And I always got the same response, which was, oh, I get it now. And so I started doing those more. Right. And started sharing them publicly, and one thing led to another, and I've made a career of it. So that's sort of the really short version of my career.
The New York Times got you involved?
Yeah. So I initially was just sharing these, like I noticed after the clients liked them, I anytime I would get asked a question more than once, that was kind of how I decided. If I got asked a question by a client or prospective client more than once, I would take my answer and I would write it up. And then I would draw something to try and illustrate it. And I'd put it up on this blog. And, really nobody was reading it for a very long time. And then one thing led to another, and it's a rather long story, but the short version of it is I got an email one day from the editor at the New York Times saying, hey, we love these. Would you do them for us? And I knew enough to say yes and figure it out later. So I said yes, and we did a little experiment. I didn't know it was an experiment at the time, but we decided to do like a 1 week thing, and then 1 week grew into another week, and then it was weekly for 10 years up until the end of last year. And now it's just sort of when I have something fun to say. So yeah, that's been a blast. 10 years weekly was super fun. So yeah, that's how that all started.
It is amazing. I'm a massive fan. I love the book. We use in the office for people. So I'm very much bought into the concept of the visual aspect. Like you, absolutely love it to pieces. I think is the words, making the complex financial ideas very, very simple. Yeah. And I noticed, I'm going to try and read it out here because I saw this yesterday or the day before, a tweet you put out, and I think it's try using forced constraints to learn to say more with less. Example 1, write the proposal. 2, find the 2 sentences that summarize the proposal. 3, delete the proposal. And 4, send the 2 sentences. So you're almost going from the visual now to things like that, which makes absolute sense for a lot of people.
Yeah, I think we tend to overcomplicate things. We also tend, and I know I do this a lot, like there's a great quote, I can't remember who said it, but sorry for the long letter, I didn't have time for the shorter one. And when we go through that process, just especially around, I love forced constraints. Like I love anytime I bump up against something, particularly something creative that I want to do, and there's a reason that I can't do it, I think, oh, cool. What if we flip that reason on its head? And the reason became, instead of it being a flaw, it became the feature. Like I wanted to start a podcast, but I didn't want to schedule guests because I was just like, scheduling guests, that's so hard. And so I was like, oh, I can't do a podcast then. And then somebody was like, well, yeah, you could. It could just be you. So we started this secret podcast. It's got over 1 million downloads now. Nobody knows about it. And it's just me, right? So that's just an example. Like I didn't know how to use Adobe Illustrator. Oh, I can't be a graphic designer. Oh, wait, what if the fact that I don't know how to do Adobe Illustrator becomes a feature and I just do it with a Sharpie and a piece of cardstock? And I've tried to go back, because I've tried a couple of times to use graphic design tools, and I'll design something and I'll send it to, an audience wherever. I'll send it to the editors at the Times. I'll send it out on Twitter, whatever. And I get their same response every time, which is no, like go back. So the fact that I use Sharpie and cardstock, now it's my iPad, but it's still the same concept, has become a benefit and a feature when originally it was a constraint. It was the thing that said, you can't do this. You're not allowed in here. And I love those things. So I look for them now. Like if there's a roadblock, I say to myself, like, hey, how can I use that roadblock as a feature and fuel instead of a roadblock? So I love thinking that way. Makes me super happy.
It kind of is used, if I'm right in saying, by more so in the finance sector profession, the financial advisor, financial planner. And it does seem that the financial planner is using yours, would I be right in saying, more, because the people will try and make the simple complex to justify high fees, but those that are doing an all-encompassing full financial holistic review plan for someone is trying to make the complex simple. So in essence, almost using your type of, I'm going to use the word doodles, to explain to the person how simple the plan is going to be.
Yeah, I mean, there's all sorts of stuff that goes into that statement. And a big piece of it, I think, is just as an industry, the financial services industry, speaking broadly, is for some reason scared of making things too simple. I think we don't understand, financial planners or financial advisors like that don't understand their value, because every busy, successful person I know uses words like cut to the chase, or give me the bottom line, or hey, like, and then we send them 200 pages of documents. That's not what they want. What they want is to be thoroughly diagnosed. They want you to understand the situation really clearly and then write a prescription. And I think we have a lot of fear around that. And there's a great Latin term. I won't try and pronounce the Latin term, but it's fear of emptiness. And in modern design theory, it's used to describe, this Latin term is used to describe the relationship between white space and the perception of value. A tendency to fill empty space is associated with lower value products, and vice versa. So to me, white space, simpler, speaks of confidence and value. For some reason, the industry thinks it speaks of fear and I'm not smart enough and I'm not complicated. It's the opposite. The smartest person in the room is the one that says the least.
Yeah.
And the most confident person is the one that says the least. So I think just as an industry, that financial services industry needs to learn that, but probably never will.
Yeah, I think we probably refer to it like noise, really. There's just so much noise around what we do as a profession industry. We'd love to become a profession, but we are still an industry at the moment, I think. But it is trying to cut through all that noise, and that's what effectively you're talking about there, aren't you?
Yeah, for sure. I think as the world gets noisier, the value of a clear signal goes up. And if you understand that, it'll change your career.
Yeah, very, very true. We set up these podcasts some time ago with the intention of, we were going to run them maybe next year, and then I think this virus kicked in and we said, let's give it a go now. And originally they were used to help business owners and entrepreneurs and stuff like that. And three underlying themes have seemed to come through this with adaptation, mental strength, resilience. Adaptation for you guys were living in Utah. You decided, did I read somewhere or hear a podcast you were on that you were intending to go to France, but somebody said, go to New Zealand. You spent a couple of years there. Then you decided, was it your wife was getting a nursing qualification?
Interior design.
Apologies, in London, and you came here. So you've had to adapt to different, not even to different countries, to different continents.
Yeah, I didn't necessarily sign up for it or know that we were doing it, but yeah, when we decided to move we were happy, established in our home in Park City, Utah. And 6 months before, it might have even been 4 months before we moved to New Zealand, we had never even thought of it. We had talked about trying to spend some time outside the country, just outside the United States, just to have the experience. And we had tried to go to France, to Chamonix, actually, because my kids and I all love the mountains and climbing and skiing, and it never really worked. So we sort of put that on the shelf, and then we decided to try it. Like, an opening happened, and my wife mentioned it to somebody, and they said, no, you should go to New Zealand instead. And so we ended up in New Zealand. We were going for a year. We stayed for 3.5. And then my wife has always wanted to go to design school, and she found an interior design school in London and applied. And we really didn't think that she would get in the first time. And this was in August, and school started in September. And she got in and was like, "Oh, I'll just defer. We can't." And the family sat her down and just said, "No, you go." So she went in September. We all followed in January, and now we've been here since January. And it's really interesting to me what you learn by putting yourself in, sort of put yourself at risk for learning something, right? By doing something. And it's been super valuable. It's also very tiring, right? Like the cognitive demand of the small decisions, like, where is the mayonnaise? What do you mean you close at 4? Like, how come there's no, like, how come everybody's driving on the other side of the road? Like, all of that kind of stuff is also a challenge.
Would you have remained in New Zealand for another period of time? Did you get interested in, their religion down there, rugby, or had you?
Oh yeah. Yeah, we love New Zealand. I just sort of out of sheer luck, my strength trainer trained 5 of the current All Blacks in this little town we lived in. So you would go into the gym, and Kane Hames would be in there, and Liam Squire, and it was like, in America, you would think that's like walking into the gym and LeBron James was there. So I got to know some of them. In fact, I watched the England All Blacks game, World Cup game, in my house with a couple of them, the ones that weren't on the team, and loved everything about New Zealand. There's almost nothing, except the only thing we didn't love is how far away it was from family. So that was it. We'll be back.
Did you then, you come up to the UK, maybe in London rugby isn't as massive, so did you develop a fondness for football? Because I noticed Mr. Alan Smith took you to a QPR game, I think, was on Twitter.
Yeah, right when we got here, like the weekend we got here. Yeah, my daughter is super keen football player, and
okay.
So she loves it. I've always loved it. I played in my school days, and I've always loved that sport. And obviously we haven't gotten to see any of the sort of big matches yet, but that'll come around.
Massive. The other thing we touch on is mental strength and toughness, and we've chatted to a few people in the sporting profession, be it coaches, backroom staff, and even players themselves, and even Olympic athletes in Olympics and Paralympics. And we've asked them the same question: when you've had a bad day, how do you park it? So I suppose the same thing is, we all have bad days. Is there something that you can shed a light on if someone is having a bad day? How do you park that day and get on with it?
Yeah, I mean, to me, it's becoming increasingly important to allow myself to feel those feelings. So I used to just be like, no bad days, I'll just go, like I would just grind through it. And now I think it's more important to go like, hey, I'm having a bad day. And particularly the people around me, just to communicate like, hey, I want you to know, like, anything that's going on, it's all about me. It's not about you. And have a couple go-to things. Now, the challenge with go-to things that make you feel a little better is to find ones that are actually positive rather than negative. So ones that help the situation, like sleep, a walk, because what we want is a little hit of dopamine, right? What we want to do is sit down in front of the TV. What we want to do is spend 2 hours scrolling through Twitter. What we want to do is eat something that will give us a little bit of relief, but that doesn't help the problem. It just creates a deeper spiral. So I've just tried to replace those things with things that make me feel better, but also help me long-term.
Yeah. I developed, especially now in the last few weeks, when we wake up in the morning, if it's a bad night's sleep or something. In the past, you may have a little bit of an argument or something like major because you haven't had a good night's sleep, and that manifests over the day. So in our house now, we wake up, we almost scale our how we feel as soon as we get up on a scale of 1 to 10. And it sounds absolutely silly, but we go, I'm a 4 today, or I'm a 3, and it kind of go, right, you need a bit of space, and it works that way for us. It sounds absolutely crazy and very simple, but it seems to work in our house. So if I wake up and I say, oh, bad night's sleep, and it's a 2 or a 3, my wife goes, right, off you go, get on the watt bike, and don't come back until the endorphins kick in and you feel good again. And it does work.
Yeah,
it's
for sure.
A strange thing and a simple thing to do. But you're also the person that, especially on Twitter, gives permission to people. There's a lot of times you give permission and people ask you, can they do this, that, or the other, and you grant permission.
Yeah, we're going to expand that project actually. That started a couple of years ago with a New York Times column where I just declared myself. I said, look, I'm the self-declared king of permission granting. If you've got a thing that you want to do, and it's important to understand, like, I'm sort of thing agnostic. I didn't really care what the thing was. I mean, as long as it was not evil, I didn't care what the thing was. I didn't care if it was big or small or heroic or whatever. You had a thing. And so I just said, look, I grant you permission. And if you need it more specifically, email me. And I put my email address in the column. And I got hundreds and hundreds of emails. And they were the ones like, here, I'll tell you one story. Like, one of them was like, thank you. I just quit my job. And I replied and was like, whoa, hey, wait, like, what, do you have a plan? And the lady was like, yeah, of course. I'm a senior partner at a law firm. I've had my resignation letter in my drawer for 4 months. Your column gave me permission to do it because I want to move home and help my parents with the farm. So I followed up with some of these people. I just got an email yesterday, Monday, from somebody saying, hey, do you remember? They were responding to another newsletter we'd sent out, but they said, hey, do you remember 2 years ago, you granted me permission to quit my job and start my own company? And I want to tell you, it's been amazing. But I followed up with some of those people. There were people like, one lady wanted to move to Scotland and write poetry. Somebody else who just wanted permission to leave work at 3:30 on Friday to pick his son up from school.
Wow.
Right. So it ranged from like, I'm quitting my job and moving to France to like, I just want to leave work. It's like, and I can do it. It's just, I'm not giving myself permission to do it. So, the lady who quit her job, I checked in with her and she said, yeah, I moved home to help my parents with the farm. My dad passed away 18 months later. So I was there to get everything stable. She was an attorney. So she's like, we worked out all the legal issues that were going on with the farm. And now I've set up a small office helping other farmers in the area with their legal issues. She's like, I've never been happier. So it's fascinating to me that we all need it. Like, I think we all need permission. Yeah. And some people have figured out how to give themselves permission to do the thing that they've always wanted to do. And other people need it from somebody else. And I'm happy to be that person. So we're going to actually expand that project of granting people permission over the next couple of years. That's a new big project I'm working on that will probably end in a book.
It sounds amazing that you've changed so many people's lives, and even with that one of the person without realizing it got to spend the last 18 months of their parents' life with them and enjoying the time with them without even realizing that they didn't have that. They may have thought they had longer together, and it must make you feel really, really good inside, because you're just telling them, I know it's a play on words, giving permission, but for them people to say, I'm going to do it now, and then for it to work out so well, it must make you feel really, really good.
No, it's been really fun. We had stickers made that said Carl gave me permission, and I'm just like, here, put this on your thing. Like, but the ultimate form of permission. In fact, we had a financial planner that you probably know that lives up in the Cotswolds. He wanted permission to buy a new mountain bike. He said, I don't have a problem. I don't know why. I don't have a problem buying bikes, but can I have permission? I was like, permission granted. Sent me a picture 2 days later of the bike. But I think the ultimate form of permission is like the last step in this process is helping people realize that you don't need the king of permission granting. Like you now have permission to grant yourself permission, right? And you always did, by the way, but I'm glad we got you here now. So yeah, and I think that permission, we're sort of always looking, like move to New Zealand. Who does that? You're not allowed to do that. Well, we did. Who gave you permission to do that? Well, I did. Like, I don't know why or how. So I think what I'm encouraging people to do is it all starts with a thing. There's some thing that you wanted to do. Like, we all know it. Most of us have figured out how to jam it down far enough because the system sort of just crushed it out of us that we can't even remember what it was. But next time you're on a walk or you're out doing something or you see some piece of art or something and you feel it and you're like, oh yeah, that's right. And you go to jam it down because that's what you do reflexively. I'm just saying, hey, just wait before you tamp that thing. Could you just dance with it just a little bit, right? You don't have to do anything. You don't have to quit your job. You don't have to tell anyone. Just could you start by just dancing with it again? Just going, hey, I remember you. Like, you used to come around a lot. Like, sorry for the way I've treated you. Like, can you just hang out a bit? Maybe write it down. Like, just let it. And then when that thing grows a bit, and often it starts as an unspeakable thing. I think that's why we have that term in art. Like, it's an I don't even know how to use the words. But once you get some form around it, then you start to realize, like, okay, well, I need to do this. And you're like, well, I'm not allowed to. Well, yeah, you are. You can grant yourself permission. But if you need mine, just email me. I'll help you. I'll send you a sticker.
If you're going to start franchising this, can I apply for the UK version of King of Granting Permissions UK?
Yeah, for sure. I've had so much fun with it. Like, we started a ministry. We were like, the Ministry of Permission Granting is open. I will check. Like, oh geez, that's a tough one. Let me check with the whole group. Oh yeah, we've decided, and you can. Yeah, it's been really, really fun.
It's strange because I think I know the person you're on about in the Cotswolds. I think it's only one of three people I wouldn't know. And I think if it's the same person I'm thinking about, that person is on Twitter regularly showing the routes that they've just done on a mountain bike. And if it's the same person, they probably didn't need permission to justify spending the amount of money, because it was probably, in a nice way, something that was affordable, just probably something that they may have had 3 other bikes and they just wanted to do something, but they're getting so much fun out of it now just by asking a third party, can I do this? Of course you can. Go and do it. It's going to make you happy.
Yeah, permission granted.
Some highs and some lows in your career, sir.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the toughest times for me, for sure, was 2008, 2009. I mean, I was running my own firm. We lived in Las Vegas, Nevada, which was ground zero of the sort of housing crisis. Our own financial situation was massively impacted by the housing crisis and some decisions we had made around that with the best intentions. The business was massively impacted, and it was tough. I didn't know exactly how to deal with it. Nobody teaches you how to deal with, we're not allowed to talk about money with anybody. And as financial planners, we're certainly not allowed to talk about it because you can't show any weakness there. So that was tough, lonely, tough times. And it all turned around really when I decided that no one was coming to help me. Right. When I finally was just like, no, I did this. I don't care about the system. I don't care about the whatever, like, mistakes that were made at banks or I do not care. This is my responsibility and I will own it, and I'll figure it out. I'll suffer the consequences. I'll take the consequences. I'll be honest all the way through, and we'll dig out of this. Like, once I decided that, things turned around. Rather than looking for somebody to blame or feeling sorry for myself. So that was definitely the low. I have highs all the time. Like they're as simple as an email from somebody who's like, "Hey, you granted me permission 2 years ago." You know, publishing a book with Penguin was a pretty high light, just because I'd grown up with, like, from a work perspective, I'd grown up with Seth Godin's books around, and I'd always looked at the spine, and Portfolio has that archer on the spine, and I never would have dared actually say like, someday I want to publish a book with Portfolio, who's owned by Penguin. I never, but I think it was planted in my head because I looked at those books every day because they were on my credenza, all three of my favorite of his, 12 books. And they all had the archer. And I always thought, like, that'd be cool. That's cool. I don't know. I ever said that would be. I just think I said, that's cool. So when that actually happened, that was pretty cool. The New York Times is always like my first cover story. The first time I ended up on the front page of the printed, they send you the press, like the metal plate from the press.
Wow.
That was pretty cool. So from a work perspective, but all of those things actually kind of pale in comparison to the single reader emails where you're like, hey, this really changed the way I think about this. Or like when you get a sense that your work's making a difference to an individual, that's pretty powerful.
You mentioned, just there might be a tangent, the crisis back in the 2008 and so on, your resilience to adapt, change, and just get on with it. And I suppose with the world that it is now, there's going to be a lot of people that listen to the podcasts with us that will be business owners and stuff like that. And I suppose they have to basically realize that there won't be a huge amount of people to help them. They just need to, like you did, adapt and get on with it. And there will be light at the end of the tunnel, just like you've had.
I think it's so important. Like it sounds trite to say, like, if you can just remember in those moments, like I mean, here, I'll tell you what changed for me is something that Eckhart Tolle, he's the author of The Power of Now. I would listen to that book, the audio, to fall asleep during that time. And he said something that drove me crazy. It still kind of drives me crazy. He said, problems, you don't have any problems right now. And I was always like, what do you mean? Like, I'm about to lose my house, like my business, my house. And he's like, no, that's something you're about to have happen to you. It's not happening now. Like right in this moment, you have no problems. And it really annoyed me until I started to understand, like, I even had conversations with my wife. I'm like, look, I remember saying to her, like, assume you and the kids are going to go. And she's like, what are you talking about? Like, we'll move into an apartment. Like, are you crazy? Like, and I was like, oh, really? So my point is it's not going to be as bad as you think, even if you lose everything, like we have the ability to get through it. And I think if we can just, my pattern for this and to remember, like, it will pass. When you're in the middle of it, you can't believe that that's true, that good things will, like, just like we can have negative surprises that you never would have been able to think of, like what we're going through. There can be positive surprises that you would have never been able to think of. My son reminded me of that a couple of months ago. He said, Dad, don't forget, there can be positive surprises that you haven't thought of. But I think even in my pattern for that now is, number one, assess the current situation. And I think that's where a lot of the problem starts, is we are just hiding. Like we don't want to know. We drink our way out of it. We eat our way out of it. We get angry. We do whatever. But when you can find the courage, and it may take you a little while, and that's okay. Like, patient with yourself, Jen. When you can find the courage to, number one, assess the current situation. Just like, and I remember when I got there, it took me a couple days of focusing on the only thing I felt like I could control, which was my breath. I literally, like, for a couple of days, I was like, I can't think about anything else. Just, okay, go back to your breath. Every time I'd start looping on how bad it is, I'd go like, oh, just go back to your breath. Just don't loop. Once I got that sense of control from my own breath expanded, I found the energy to go, okay, how bad is this? And then you're like, okay, let's get it out of the looping out of our heads and onto a piece of paper. Like, what is the actual situation? And once it was out, I was like, oh, I don't have to walk around anymore wondering, like it's there. And then step number 2, after you assess the current situation, is take action, like small micro action. Like, what's the next thing? And realize it's a guess. Situation's changing so fast, no one knows. So you just make a guess. And when you take that action, this is so powerful to me. Like, most people get hung up. First of all, they won't look at the situation. If they do, then they think they can analyze their way to finding the exact right next step. So they spend all this time trying to make a perfect plan. And the exercise I take people through is like, if you're sitting in a room right now, look around the room as hard as you can. Try and absorb everything you can in the room. And then take one step forward and notice what you see now. Like, you'll see new stuff just because you're in a new place. And it wouldn't matter how hard you had tried in your previous location. You could have been the hardest looker in the world, the best looker in the world. You wouldn't have seen that stuff. So that's step number 2, is you just take an action in the direction that you guess is the right direction. And then what will happen then is new information will become available to you. And then that will allow you to course correct, to say, okay, now you repeat, what's the current situation? And this is all from academic literature, that the best way to navigate a complex adaptive environment, which is what we are. The definitions of those aren't important here, but we're in a complex adaptive environment. And adaptive is important to understand. An adaptive environment is an environment that your interaction with it changes the environment. Right? So when you make a decision to move, the environment actually changes because of that decision. So we're in a complex adaptive environment. From the academic literature, the only way to navigate that is to solve what the literature says, solve for the next local optimum. So what's the next best decision you can make? And I like to think of those as micro actions, so small that it feels like you shouldn't even do it. Do that, and you just repeat that. And in a really, like, a business owner right now that is, maybe going to lose the business, like, the cycle rate through assess current situation, take an action, assess current rate, like, the cycle rate's just sped up, right? So the cycle rate's driven by how volatile the situation is. So you might have somebody who does that once every 6 months. Like, your portfolio is fine. If it falls below 1.2 million, we need to talk. See you in 6 months. But you may also have somebody who's 3 or 4 times a day. And I'm finding it's massively helpful. I found back then, and I'm finding right now, to get that out on a piece of paper, so that even if it's like 2 or 3 times a day, when you go on a walk and it comes back, you can go, oh, wait, I've got that written on the piece of paper. I don't have to think about that. Right. And so step 1, assess current situation. Step 2, take a micro action. And the third step is set a trigger for when or what new information would warrant thinking about this again. So it could be like, tomorrow at 10, the bank's going to call me. Write that down. So it's 7:00 tonight. You know the situation, you know the next action, there's nothing you can do until tomorrow at 10. Okay, well, it's 7:00. When you go on a walk at 7, there's no reason to be thinking about it. Yeah. And you will anyway, but you can say, oh, that's right, I have it on a piece of paper. And I found that to be massively valuable with any decision. I just got an email today or 2 days ago from a friend of mine who is trying to make a big decision, and he comes home and talks about it with his wife every single night. And his wife finally said, I've had it. I can't. So they went through this exercise, and they're like, look, there's no new information for 3 months. We don't need to rethink this decision unless one of these 3 things happens. And he wrote me and was like, man, it's changed our marriage, because every time I try to talk about it, my wife just goes, man, points at the fridge where the thing's posted on the wall. So anyway, that's how I think you handle those really tough situations.
That's really good. That's a great way of looking at it. You know, people overanalyze everything, don't they? And I think if you can follow those sort of three points you mentioned, then you just pull it back and you deal with it when you need to deal with it.
Yeah, for sure. And you don't rethink it. We're constantly, like every day, we talk about where are we going to live next. So we've done the same thing. We're like, look, here's the decisions we've made. Here's the guesses we have. Here's the couple things that could change it. And if somebody brings the topic up again, we can just look, has any of those changed? No, none of them changed. Okay, done.
Market. It's amazing. The micro action thing is a big thing. I've brought into the working environment as well. You even look at it in the sporting context, that is it British Cycling and then Team Sky and the Tour de France, and they do all these micro actions where, if they've done 100 changes, it's 100% change. And they weren't getting great sleep, I think. And the guy at the time, Sir Dave Brailsford, got mattresses, and they brought the mattresses every night to the new hotels, so they always slept in the same type of bed, and that was a little micro action that meant better sleep and all that. So all of those little steps, and I think you have a picture of it where there's the step and it's the big thing with the micro actions. It works. Superb.
Yeah, I think what do they call that? Marginal gains, right? Marginal improvements or marginal gains. And I think we just underestimate all that. Like, just if you improve, that's James Clear's work, right? Like a 1% improvement every day for a year, you're in a different world.
Yeah. You go to the gym. Oh, I've only got 20 minutes to go to the gym. I'm not going to bother today. But if you do go, it's 20 minutes extra you've got in the lock done. But I'm conscious of time now. We'll finish up. Surely over all of the places that you've visited and all of the talks you've given and stuff like that, there has to be some funny moments that you can share with us. And we don't need to share the time when you were in Newport in Wales and you had about 7 minutes to get it into your train, and some Irish guy gave you a lift. And he watched as you gripped the doors with all your might, thinking, we were flying down the M4 at a city speed, but you managed to get that. But we don't need to tell the listener about that.
That was really good. Thank you for that. That's funny. I should keep track, because there's nothing really coming to mind other than this. It's always kind of funny to me. Especially when I give a talk to financial planners, and I feel like I've shared this really important stuff and these big mindset shifts and way to think about things. And inevitably somebody will raise their hand during the Q&A and say, because I present using my iPad, and people will say, what program on your iPad are you using? And I'm always like, come on, really? Like, I just gave this huge thing. It's like I was reminded Stephen King, apparently at a writer's conference, there was 2,000 people there, and he gave this talk, and the first question was, what kind of pencil do you use? And he was like, seriously? Like, what kind of, I think you've missed the point. So there's that. I haven't had, I think one of the most interesting events for me, well, there's two. I'll tell you the one here. I can't remember what year this was, but Greg Davies, who is a behavioral finance, professor, really, like one of the smartest people I know around risk and behavioral finance, he organized this thing called the stock market opera. I think it was called Open Outcry. And it was, I can't even try and explain it. You'll just have to Google it and see. But it was amazing. And it was held at, what would we call this? The Lord Mayor's house, the last of the city palaces in London, right? That's called the Lord Mayor's house, right? You guys are supposed to know.
I probably should know the answer.
It's where the mayor lives.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, there will be Lord Mayor's house.
No, I don't think it's where the... Huh? Anyway, it's the last of the city palaces. It's a beautiful place right down in the city. And Greg asked me if I would come over and do an art exhibit. And I'd recently done a big 50-piece solo exhibit that ran for 8 weeks, and it was super fun. And Greg was like, yeah, so we created these chalkboards, and we put the images on these chalkboards. And my dad and I came over early, a couple weeks, and we found an art space, and we actually built the chalkboards here. We went out and got wood and did the whole thing. And we go to we go to install it like the day before the event. And there's in this building, which I'm really feeling bad, I can't remember the name of exactly, but there's the Egyptian Hall, like it's the grand hall. And that's where the art exhibit was going to be. And I thought we would like put nails in the wall and hang the things on the walls. But there were all these Dutch masters in the way, right? like real, like there was like a Rembrandt and like real art. And they're like, no, you do not put nails in the wall of the Egyptian Hall. So they had these walls built, right? Like little, like whatever, maybe like 8 foot high walls. And that was where the art was going to go. So I just remember being like, what? And this is maybe a good topic to end on is what always happens at those events, and it still happens to me today, and I've actually grown to love it, is when I that experience of the, like, here's a chalkboard with one of my sketches on it, and right behind it, like I have a picture of this, like my chalkboard, and then right behind it in the background is a Dutch, like a super famous Dutch master, like original or something. I don't even know the right words to use. And that feeling. And then I came out later, and the guys who were hanging the stuff on these walls that they had built, they were laughing, right? Like the installers of my work were sort of like, what is this? And they didn't know it was, and I was like, hey fellas, could we just hang the stuff? Like, you can keep your commentary till like you're out of the room. But I remember this sense, and I refer to this, there's a word for this feeling, because I can remember this in South Africa when I spoke to an audience of 3,500 and it was in Cape Town. And there's this thing that shows up all the time, every single time. And it's this feeling of like, what are you doing here? Like, I hope no one finds out who you really are, right? Like, who gave you permission? Don't they know that you're a kid from the hills in Utah? Like, that's kind of the feeling. And I bet everybody listening to this is related. Like, if you've ever been in a business meeting, sit down in the conference room, and you realize you're the adult in the room, right? Like, everybody's looking to you. And you're like, whoa, how did I get here? And I was really puzzled by this feeling, because I would just be like, I just grit my teeth and do it anyway. And then I was having a conversation with sort of one of these psychologists, work psychologists, that a company that I was working for hired. And everybody, when you got hired, you had a meeting with this lady. And I was telling her about it. She goes, oh, do you know that has a name? I was like, no, what are you talking about? She's like, yeah, that feeling has a name. And I was like, what's the name? She's like, the imposter syndrome. And I was like, oh, no way. Like, it was so exciting to me that it had a name, because if it had a name, that meant other people felt it. And if other people felt it, it meant that I wasn't crazy. And so I've learned with that feeling. So that was here in London. I mean, of all places, like, I spoke at the event, and like the guy that spoke before me is like the most famous mathematician in the world, like a mathematician with 120,000 followers on Twitter. Like, his chalkboard was one of the chalkboards that was whatever theorem was used to like, they solved that on his chalkboard, and he kept it with him when he would move from office. Anyway, I spoke right after him, and I'm like, what? That feeling shows up now. What I do when that feeling shows up is I've gone back over my life and realized, like, every time I ever did anything that mattered, everything cool, like my marriage, the birth of all my children, actually, any big, not to compare them, but a big mountain bike race, an adventure, something at work, the first book, the second book, like all of them, for me, it's a guy. I personified him. It's Homer Simpson's boss is what he looks like, Mr. Burns. He's there. And when I realized that, I was like, wait, he's at all the good parties. He's always there. Like, I thought you were supposed to kick fear in the teeth, like, no fear. And now I've realized, no. Like, I want more. Like, I want to go wherever that guy is. So now when he shows up, I don't get all clinched anymore. I go, at first I have to recognize that clinching feeling is that. And then I go, oh, that's right. like, hey man, I'm glad you're back. Like, we must be about to do something cool. Let's get to work. So to me, that's maybe the most like kind of sort of interesting, fun story from any event I've done, is just like how I became acquainted with the imposter syndrome.
Amazing.
Oh,
what a way to finish. That's
brilliant. What's just very quickly, what's next, Carl?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think of my career as just a series of projects, and success is that if each project allows me to do the next one, right? Success is allowing me to continue to do projects. And so we're working on a couple big projects. One of them is internally we call it the Permission Granted project. Obviously we do a lot of work with financial advisors, which we've just launched a bunch of stuff that's been amazingly fun and well received. And so I'll just keep working on projects, and I've learned to sort of embrace the uncertainty of all that. I mean, I don't know exactly what's next, but I know what we're working on tomorrow.
That society thing is almost like Fight Club. You don't talk about it.
Yeah, I don't even know what you're talking about.
Brilliant. It's been an absolute pleasure talking to you, sir.
Thank you.
I've been looking forward to it for a few days now, and it's been absolutely brilliant. Thank you very, very much for chatting to us.
Oh, my pleasure. Thanks for asking such good questions.
Brilliant, Carl. Thank you very much for that. It's been an absolute pleasure talking to you. Some great takeaways as usual from the episode. Head over to our website, www.sanfp.co.uk, to learn more about us and our journey. That's it for this episode. Next, we're talking all things business, family, cleaning with Rachel Flanagan, founder of Miss Bucket Cleaning Services. You can hear that wherever you get your podcasts. Plus, don't forget to click and subscribe to get all the latest episodes as soon as they arrive. Now, don't forget to listen to our new Chats at the Bar series coming out every Tuesday for a short insight into business, money, finance, aspirations, dreams, and planning. Also, if you're enjoying our series, please do leave us some feedback with a quick review, as this helps us grow to ensure we are giving our audience the best experience. Until next time, thanks very much for listening.